Welcome back to another episode of OpenRCT2 tutorials. In this video, I'm going to be taking you on a tour of my latest park, Rainbow Towers. Now this is a charming little park full of manicured gardens, beautiful scenery, and a kind of European castle vibe. The park features 14 brand new rides that I invented, from a tilt coaster to drop towers to a merry-go-round with horses that actually go up and down, and even kiddie rides, so there's a lot to see here. And after this video, I'll be posting tutorials so that you can build all of these rides yourself, so make sure to subscribe, and let's get started with the tour. Here we have the aforementioned Rainbow Tower entrance, and we have a nice plaza here with the merry-go-round behind it and some kiddie rides with like a forest vibe on either side. So I built these beautiful towers. It took me way too long to get this perfect, but I think it's a really fun entrance. And then again, here's the carousel, and if you look closely, you can actually see that the horses do go up and down. It's a fun little trick. And then there's an inner circle where there's a jousting knight horse that goes around within the carousel. So that's a fun ride. A little tricky to get it to work right, but it's an actual working carousel. Here's another angle. And then as we move over here, we can see the forest of kiddie rides here. Over in the top left, we have the Dragonflyer ride. So this is a really easy ride to build. We just have the Dragonflyer cars from one of the expansion packs swinging around. It just looks like a really fun, kind of mild ride, and you can also use other vehicles instead of the Dragonflyers. Then we have the kiddie version of that, so an even smaller version with just 4 cars. So a nice, gentle, swinging ride for the kids. And then we have the wave swinger. I call this Wind in the Willows, but basically I was trying to imitate the classic wave swinger ride, and this doesn't involve any shoestrings, so it's really easy to build, and I think it's a great addition to every park because it's such a classic ride, and I just kind of gave it a tree vibe, so I think that's really fun. Now here we can see the fountains in the lake that's at the center of the park, just really beautiful for all the guests to look at. And then as we move over here, we can see the Kitty Corner ride, which is a little kiddie ride I made with the kitten cars going around, bouncing up and down. So something really easy to build and just really fun to give your park some more gentle rides. And then here is the monorail station briefly, but next to it we have more kiddie rides with that forest feel. Now this is actually one ride, there's just one queue line, but it's actually 3 different rides. We have the lizards over there, the butterflies here, and then the ladybird trains here. So 3 different gentle rides, but it's actually all one ride, so one queue line. So I think that's really fun, a little bit of shoestringing. And then here we have the monorail station. I did a little bit of trickery with this to get the monorail to work with block section mode in a synchronized fashion with the other station, and I will show you that a little bit later. And then now we can move on from the entrance plaza to the middle of the lake here. So I built this grand lake to serve as the center of the park. I wanted to evoke that feeling of the palaces in Europe, like Versailles, where they have these beautiful manicured grounds and gardens and then a giant lake in the center. Now the color of the water is slightly different than the normal colors. I actually changed the palette in this park. Now you can actually do that by going to the object selection and changing the color of the water from natural to something else, but you do have to download the palettes. I've just accumulated a lot from downloading other people's parks, but you can download tons of different color palettes online or make your own. Now at the center of the lake we have the Swan ride, where it actually takes guests from one side of the lake to the other, and the swans kind of travel in little trios, so it looks like little families of swans gently going around the lake. So I think that's a nice little touch here. Moving on, we have the parachute drop tower here. Now I already made a tutorial showing how to build this ride, but in this version I actually added the submarine vehicles in addition to the chairlift cars that the riders are in to kind of give it an airship feel. So I call this dirigible drop, so I think it looks fun, like little blimps or little zeppelins going up and down. And then the center of the ride also has an observation tower serving as the structure for the parachute drop tower. So 2 rides in one. And then next to the parachute drop tower, we have this zipper. So a classic carnival ride I tried to create in the game using the multi-dimension vehicles. So basically it's the twisting upside down cars of the zipper going around. A little bit of shoestringing here, but nothing too difficult, and just a fun ride. I haven't really seen anyone build this in the game, so I did my best to try and recreate that ride. And then behind the zipper, we have the big slide. Now this is another classic ride you see at many fairs, a giant slide where people kind of ride on mats. So here I use the Alpine coaster cars and the Virginia Reel as the track. So it looks like the guests are just sliding down. And what's really unique about this ride is that I'm actually using just one queue line. So there's actually some trickery going on with multiple stations, but the guests are all just entering through one queue line. That's why they don't all go together necessarily. They're not synchronized, but it's still a really fun way to not have to have 4 different queue lines for this ride. Moving on, now we have this mansion-like structure, and inside is a Madhouse ride. I know Vekoma builds these, but some other manufacturers as well. I think Hex at Alton Towers, and then there's some Houdini rides at some of the Six Flags parks. These are all the Madhouse ride, where guests kind of sit in a room on these benches and they think that they're just in a normal room, but the room spins around them while the ride moves the carriages a little bit just to give them this weird sensation that the room is spinning. So that's a really exciting ride, I think, to add to the game. And then next to the Madhouse, we have a very basic example of a food stall. So I built this very simple building and then hid the bathrooms and the food stalls inside because I was very lazy. And then here we have the Labyrinth. This hedge maze is actually just one continuous path, so the guests don't get lost. It looks very beautiful with the towers and arches I've added. So I think it really gives the park that kind of garden feel. Very charming. And now here we can see the monorail where the 2 trains will pass each other. So I made this kind of little switch track here. There's some hidden track and a little bit of trickery going on to make this work, and so that they always pass at the right time. And now moving on, we can see the drop tower for the park. There's actually 4 different towers here, but they are all operating as one ride. So there is just one queue line for this ride, but I think this is quite an amazing feat to build in the game. We have a quad drop tower. The only problem is the stations are not synchronized with each other, so all of the ride vehicles operate independently, but I think it looks great and is a fantastic addition to the standard drop rides that already come with the game. Now, as we move to the rear of the park, we finally get our first look at the park's signature coaster, Tantrum. Now this is a tilt coaster modeled after those made by Vekoma, and we can see it traveling around past these scenery towers and things like that. And we can also see this giant rainbow garden that surrounds the pavilion that's at the end of the lake. Now, if guests don't want to walk, they can actually take the monorail to the rear of the park, and here we find the rear station for the monorail. And next to it, we have the station for Tantrum, the tilt coaster. And here we can see the train making its way to the tilt mechanism at the top. So basically there is a lot of trickery going on here. So we have the train going across some invisible track, and then it's going to be stopped by a block brake as it waits for the train below to complete the course. So here the train below is almost to the brake run, and now the train on the tilt mechanism is able to move forward. Now this is where it gets really weird. I just had to get the train to get into the holding brake position. So there's a lot of magic happening. The train's going to wait for a moment and then drop down under the path and into the first inversion. Now here's another angle of that tilt mechanism here as the train enters the holding brake, and then the train will drop. Now I think this looks really fantastic. There's not really a better way to do it in the game as of now, so it looks a little weird, but I think it also looks amazing at the same time. Now we can follow the train as it goes through the rest of the layout with lots of twists and turns, thanks to the newly added pieces to the Giga Coaster. And then we have a cutback here, the second inversion, some more twists and turns back through these towers here. And then the ride is going to go into its final inversion before a nice overbanked airtime hill and a tunnel helix before the brakes. Now here's another view of that second half with the cutback here, the final few turns before entering the inversion that goes over the gardens here and over the path, and then into that final underground helix and hitting the brake run. And then up above you can see the next train entering the tilt mechanism. So in real life the track would actually tilt forward so that the train would just kind of be on like a giant teeter-totter. I feel like in real life it would be absolutely terrifying to tilt forward and just be held there until the track lines up. But let's take this version for a ride. So it's going to look really weird here in the viewport because there's a lot of trickery going on. So first of all, we have the magic that's happening here as the train is getting into position to land on the holding brake, and it's going to hold here for a moment. But the reason that we are watching the rear of the train and not the front is because I had to use a plug-in and move the ride vehicles around and make some invisible just to get the holding brake to work, and also to get the block brakes to work on this ride. So there's a lot of trickery and magic that goes on behind the scenes, so stay tuned for that tutorial. Overall, I'm very proud of the layout that I came up with for this coaster. In the real world, I think there's only a couple of these rides that actually exist, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot more in the future. Now that's the end of the tour of Rainbow Towers. If you'd like to download the park yourself, the link is in the video description. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe, because I'll be creating tutorials for all of the rides you saw in this video today. And let me know in the comments which tutorial you'd like to see first. Thanks for watching.